Today, I bring you a 2025 American horror film titled Return of the People. As a friendly reminder, this movie is extremely gory, so don't watch it while eating. A police car suddenly stops by the side of the road. It turns out the driver urgently needs to relieve himself. However, he can only urinate while listening to music, otherwise, he just can't do it. Inside the police car, a highly dangerous killer is being transported. One of the male officers in the car starts gossiping about the killer's story, getting more and more animated as he speaks. This masked murderer not only slaughtered half the prisoners in his prison but also killed several guards. He even murdered his best friend's mother. The more the officer talks, the angrier he gets, eventually pulling out a stun gun. However, just as he lets his guard down, the masked killer suddenly breaks free from his chains, grabs the officer by the throat, and snatches the stun gun from his hand. He then stabs the officer dozens of times before stomping his head flat. The female officer nearby is so terrified that she hesitates to shoot, only to be strangled to death with an iron chain in the next moment. Meanwhile, the driver is still urinating, completely unaware that the killer has already exited the police car. Soon, he becomes the next victim. After eliminating everyone, the killer returns to his hideout. He puts on his signature pig head mask. At that moment, he truly becomes himself again, the infamous Pigman killer. 5 young girls go on a forest trip. They discuss the legend of Pigman but dismiss it as just a myth, not taking it seriously. Little do they know, the killer's accomplices are already prepared, waiting for Pigman to choose his favorite among them while the others become his next meal. As the 5 girls check their map for the campsite location, a blonde young man carrying a hunting rifle approaches. When he learns where they're headed, he looks surprised and warns them against going there, as bad things tend to happen, especially to young, beautiful girls like them. But the more they're told not to go, the more determined they become. One of the girls eventually finds the route via GPS, and they drive off toward the campsite. The blonde man gives up on convincing them and says no more. Not long after, the girls arrive at a remote cabin in the woods. They find it picturesque, like a painting, with no sense of danger at all. Suddenly, one of the girls, Xiaomei, notices a pig-headed figure staring at them from a distance. But when she blinks, it vanishes. She assumes it was just her imagination. She heads to the cabin to check in but finds no one responding, no matter how much they call out. They decide to check the parking lot for the owner. Out of nowhere, a man claiming to be Old Jaw, the cabin's owner, appears. His sudden arrival startles the girls. Since they had only communicated over the phone when booking, they don't suspect his true identity. Meanwhile, 3 young men, also on a trip, experience car trouble and are forced to walk toward the campsite. Back at the cabin, Old Jaw introduces the girls to the area. Due to its remoteness, there's no cell signal, only a landline in his room can make calls. After his explanation, Old Jaw leaves. Elsewhere in the forest, the 3 young men are walking leisurely. One of them, a girl wearing headphones, is captivated by the scenery and stops to paint. Her older sister and brother-in-law, feeling indulgent, wait for her. To pass the time, the couple sneaks off to have a little fun. But just as things heat up, Pigman appears. With a hook, he impales the sister's body. Her horrified husband tries to run, but his legs give out in fear. Moments later, Pigman brutally kills him as well. He doesn't even check if the man is dead before leaving. Back at the cabin, the 5 girls are drinking and chatting, unaware that Pigman is watching them from the shadows. Xiaomei drinks too much and starts feeling sick, so she heads inside to rest. Suddenly, she hears a tapping sound on the window. Nervous and curious, she cautiously approaches, only to see the badly injured brother-in-law outside. The girls immediately notify Old Jaw and call the police. However, Old Jaw dismisses their concerns, suggesting the man was likely attacked by a wild animal, as bears often roam the forest. But the girls suspect it was Pigman. The police, skeptical of the Pigman legend, conclude that the injuries were from an animal attack. They decide to take the man to the hospital for treatment. Meanwhile, in the forest, the headphone-wearing girl finally finishes her painting, only to realize her sister and brother-in-law are missing. As she searches, she stumbles upon her sister's corpse. Shocked and terrified, she starts backing away. Suddenly, Pigman lets out a guttural pig squeal. The girl panics and runs, but she steps into a bear trap. She cries in agony, unable to free herself. Pigman approaches. With nowhere to run, she can only sob helplessly. At the cabin, the 5 girls are still drinking and playing cards. Xiaomei and the blonde girl get into an argument that escalates into a physical fight. The other 3 step in to break them apart. Upset, Xiaomei leaves alone to sit by the river. The blonde young man from earlier reappears, warning Xiaomei to leave the campsite before it's too late. But one of her friends sees him and assumes he's harassing her, chasing him away. Seeing that they refuse to listen, he gives up. Elsewhere, a leopard print-clad girl from the group finds the headphone girl's sketchbook in the forest. She realizes the girl must be nearby and starts searching. Eventually, she discovers an old warehouse. Curiosity gets the best of her, and she enters, only to find the headphone girl tied up inside. As she tries to rescue her, the girl warns her to hide, Pigman could return any moment. Sure enough, Pigman arrives shortly after and brutally kills the headphone girl. The leopard print girl watches in horror from her hiding spot, holding her breath. But Pigman is ruthless, he already knows she's there. 2.5 minutes later, she is also strangled to death. Back at the cabin, two girls are relaxing in a hot spring. They suddenly notice Old Jaw peeping at them. Disgusted and furious, they yell at him and chase him away. For continuing to the next story, don't forget to subscribe to the Movie Recaps Lock channel. Subscribing is free. One of the beautiful women decided to return to her room to take a quick shower and then go back to sleep. Little did she know that Old Jaw had secretly sneaked into her room. By the time she realized it, it was already too late. In the next second, Old Jaw hacked her into pieces with an axe. At that moment, Xiaomei and Earring Girl returned to the campsite, only to find that everyone else had disappeared. A bad premonition arose in their hearts, so they decided to go to town and report to the police. However, no matter how hard they tried, the car wouldn't start. Left with no other choice, they split up to search for their missing companions. Meanwhile, the blonde girl stumbled upon the Pigman's warehouse. Inside, Old Jaw was pretending to be gravely injured, hoping to lower her guard. Just as she approached, Pigman appeared behind her, grabbed her hair, and dragged her aside before knocking her unconscious with a hammer. When she eventually woke up, she was horrified to see the corpses of the leopard print girl and the headphone girl. Terrified and at a loss, she barely had time to react before Pigman launched another attack. On the other side, Xiaomei and Earring Girl were still desperately searching for their friends. Xiaomei couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had happened. Just then, Pigman emerged, carrying the lifeless body of the blonde girl. The two women panicked and immediately ran out of the cabin, with Pigman relentlessly chasing them. Fear gripped their hearts as they ran in different directions to escape. Xiaomei hid in the bathroom, covering her mouth to avoid making any noise. However, in the next second, Pigman hooked her by the neck, leaving her unable to move. Fortunately, Earring Girl appeared just in time, allowing Xiaomei to escape. As they fled, they ran into a blonde young man who was holding a shotgun. He shouted, "Master," before instantly collapsing to the ground. It turned out this was his first time shooting, and the shock of killing someone paralyzed him. However, instead of thanking him, Earring Girl picked up the shotgun and aimed it at him, leaving him utterly confused. He accused her of being heartless, but Earring Girl, highly suspicious, no longer trusted anyone. She then ordered the young man to take them to town. As they were leaving, Pigman suddenly opened his eyes. Turns out, the shotgun had no effect on him. Meanwhile, Xiaomei tied up the blonde young man's hands with a rope. He desperately tried to defend himself, explaining that everything was Old Jia's scheme. He had previously come here to hunt, but Old Jia had threatened him, warning him not to trespass. He had even seen Pigman before and suspected that Old Jia and Pigman were behind all the disappearances. Unfortunately, the two women refused to believe him. At that moment, Old Jia arrived and shifted all the blame onto the young man, insisting that he was the real murderer. He urged Xiaomei and Earring Girl to take revenge for their fallen companions. Old Jia further claimed that the young man had raised a bloodthirsty Pigman in the forest. Strangely enough, Earring Girl actually believed him and demanded that Xiaomei hand over the shotgun to Old Jia. Although hesitant, Xiaomei was about to comply when suddenly, Pigman appeared. Seeing Pigman, the two women panicked. Pigman dragged the blonde young man away while Old Jia took the opportunity to snatch the shotgun from Xiaomei. In a desperate attempt to protect Xiaomei, Earring Girl was shot in the thigh by Old Jia. Meanwhile, Pigman was brutally smashing the young man's head, and blood was spurting everywhere. He was clearly done for. Seizing the opportunity, Xiaomei helped Earring Girl escape. Old Jia tried to shoot them but realized he was out of bullets. So he ordered Pigman to continue the chase. Earring Girl, too injured to run any further, urged Xiaomei to leave her behind. Reluctantly, Xiaomei made the painful decision to flee alone. By the time Pigman arrived, only Earring Girl remained. But instead of killing her, Pigman tied her up in the warehouse. However, Xiaomei hadn't actually left. She had secretly followed Pigman to the warehouse. Once Pigman stepped out, she rushed in to rescue Earring Girl. Knowing there was no escape, Earring Girl told Xiaomei to leave her behind. After saying their goodbyes, Xiaomei left once again. Soon after, Pigman returned and, with a knife in hand, sliced off Earring Girl's face. Meanwhile, Xiaomei, running for her life, spotted a police car. Overcome with relief, she frantically waved her arms and shouted for help. However, to her horror, the police officer turned out to be in cahoots with Pigman. he cuffed her hands and knocked her unconscious. When she woke up, she realized that Old Jaw, Pigman, and the officer were all brothers. Pigman had chosen her as his mate, intending to breed with her and create a new race. It turned out that Pigman had once been arrested and experimented on by a scientist, who injected him with a virus that mutated his body. Old Jaw later discovered that Pigman had an immortal body. No matter how much he was shot or hacked, he wouldn't die. So, they planned to use Pigman's genes to create an army and take over the world. After learning the truth, Xiaomei completely broke down, thinking it would have been better if she had just died like the others. Old Jaw and Pigman left the room to prepare for the ritual, leaving only the officer with Xiaomei. The officer had ill intentions toward her, but Xiaomei pretended to go along with it, tricking him into letting his guard down. At the crucial moment, she managed to kill him. Just as Old Jaw and Pigman rushed back, Xiaomei, as if possessed by an unknown power, killed both of them and escaped in a car. However, as she looked in the rearview mirror, she saw Pigman still alive and chasing after her. Enraged, she slammed on the gas pedal, but it was futile. Pigman was seemingly unkillable. As Xiaomei desperately tried to escape, her car hit a wild animal and flipped over. She crawled out, pulling a shard of glass from her throat, and continued running despite the excruciating pain. But Pigman had already caught up to her. She quickly found a place to hide. When the time was right, she took an axe and chopped off Pigman's head, ensuring that he would never come back to life again. In the end, Xiaomei was the only survivor. This concludes Pigman Returns, a 2025 American horror film. Overall, this is an extremely low-budget horror movie. In fact, it's more of a gore fest than an actual horror film. The biggest expense in the entire film was probably the fake blood. There wasn't much of a plot, just mindless violence. But hey, sometimes you just watch these things for fun. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. May those who click the subscribe button be blessed with abundant fortune and always be in good health. Thank you.